seconds. You know this already. Hi, I'm Karen Morgan, and I'm an executive council member with AARP Maryland. And this is Protect Week, where AARP Maryland and our partners shine a spotlight on the scourge of elder financial fraud, exploitation, and the serious problems that can be caused when criminals engage in this activity. So we are bringing together a number of experts in different areas to talk about this and to help give you information so that you can stay more protected and that your family and friends can stay more protected. So today I am really happy to have Jacqueline Cooper. She is CEO of the Maryland Blockchain Association, and we actually met while testifying on a bill in the Maryland legislature. So I'm really happy to have you here. And Jacqueline is a talk show host for the Government Blockchain Association. She's a partner at the Cogent Law Group in Washington, D.C., and her legal practice is in the area of blockchain, Web3, and innovative technologies. So we are taking a walk on the wild side today as we look into the cryptoverse and ways in which we can identify fraud and maybe protect ourselves from fraud. So, Jackie, it's so good to have you. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here, but also glad that we're able to kind of share some information for your audience as well as for the audience that I have as well, because I know we're going to be sharing this out. And it's an important topic because we all can become victims. I know I've become a victim, and I'm very knowledgeable. So, it's a different type of street awareness. Now, there's a lot of things going online, and we need to be diligent.
We really do. And one thing that I keep telling people when I do my own presentations is that anyone is susceptible to fraud. Don't fall into this myth that some people are invincible and other people are not. We're all susceptible. No one is invincible. And it doesn't matter how much of an expert you are, at the right time under the right circumstances, you can be targeted and defrauded. So I'm glad that you said that, because you're totally an expert, but you got bit. I've been called an expert, rightly or wrongly, and I've gotten bit. And Nobel Prize winners have gotten bit along with everybody else. So because of the emotional connection that these criminals make, and we're all vulnerable because we have emotions. That's the dead link into fraud, not your intelligence. It never was.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, we want to trust people, and there's two different ways to approach this. There's looking at the person who's approaching you, and then also the content that comes across your tech. So whether it's your phone, whether it's your computer, whether it's, so that content, you might know that person, you might not know that person. And so how you approach that also will help you know how are you preventing from being defrauded or scammed. I know I have two different LinkedIn profiles, and many of my associates are connected on one side. And so recently I went over to my other side and I started to connect. And some individuals said, "Is that you? We're already connected. Been connected for years." I said, "Yes, I have two profiles. I'm trying to connect you on both so you can see what I'm doing on both sides." But again, we have many ways that we can be approached, both face-to-face as well as online now. So we have to kind of think in a hybrid type of situation.
Right. So in the cryptocurrency universe, we have, the virtual world is it's pretty much everything. And the ways in which we normally interact to manage finances don't necessarily apply in the crypto world. For example, for those people who don't know, in the traditional currency world, we have like a centralized way of managing that currency. It's a fiat currency. In the case of the United States, that currency is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. And there are banks which are centralized sorts of, regulatory agencies and that sort of thing. In the crypto world, we have decentralized ways of managing things. We have wallets. We don't have bank accounts. We have wallets. And there are ways in which we can manage those to acquire assets and to distribute them if we want. So, if you are new to the world of cryptocurrency, and in this interview, we're not going to get into what are the ins and outs of crypto or what is the best, coin to invest in. What we want to focus on is what, if you are new to the cryptocurrency world, but you're interested, what are the first steps that you should be taking to secure your digital wallet?
So I'm going to break it down even farther, because again, the innovative tech is changing. I've been in the blockchain space 10 years and created the Maryland Blockchain Association along with the Blockchain Legal Institute as resources for people. So you mentioned the idea of centralized versus decentralized. So I want to clarify, and then we'll talk about the wallet side. So there are centralized exchanges, and there are also decentralized exchanges. The centralized exchanges that people might be familiar with are Coinbase, but there are others that are as well. So really what we need to think about is within these centralized exchanges, those are like banks now. They might not be providing the same insurance if something happens, but they do have certain legal requirements now that have been put in place because of regulations that have been passed. So if you are navigating a centralized exchange, that's totally different than a decentralized exchange. It's not that a decentralized exchange should not follow the same rules. However, they might not have the same oversight because people might not know that they even exist. So just because we are in what I'll call a decentralized community, which means that you might not walk down the street and find these entities. So unless someone says, oh, have you heard about this? Or have you heard about that? You might not stumble on it.
Mm-hmm.
So with some of these centralized exchanges, they're doing more advertising. So you kind of hear about them. Going back to the wallet, there's all different types of wallets, and you can have a wallet on a centralized exchange, or you can have a wallet that sort of is like on a decentralized exchange, or what I'll call floating. And so from a protection, since we're talking about Protect Week, from a protection perspective, if you are thinking about owning or investing or buying crypto, then you have to decide, okay, where am I purchasing it? And at that point, if you're purchasing it, and I'm not saying that a centralized exchange is safer than a decentralized exchange, because everything can fail, then you need to think about, okay, where am I purchasing it? And then at that point, am I keeping the token on the exchange, or am I moving it where I have more control? So there's different layers that someone who's taking those steps need to think about. The one thing I will say that I did not learn until as I kind of was educating myself more and creating the library of resources for the Blockchain Legal Institute, just because a token is on an exchange does not mean that it has liquidity behind it. It simply means that it was able to pay for the spot to be there. So
that's interesting. I don't think that's clear at all to many of those who are crypto curious.
It won't be. It won't be. So because exchanges are businesses. So they're going to choose which ones to list and which ones not. Now, some they might want to list simply because of the volume of trading that's happening, and it will bring people over to them. So they might decide, just like if a membership is given in an organization complimentary because you want those followers from that other organization to come over to you. So there's a lot of business reasons why things happen. And, for everyone who's listening, remember, this is a business. People who are creating these tokens are not doing it out. There are tokens, some tokens that are for the goodness of projects. And their motive and their intent is really to create funds to help different things like that. But most of these tokens, it's a business venture. So think of it like that.
Interesting. So here's one thing that I'm wondering. I mean, one of the big concerns that our audience has, especially in the fraud space, has to do with artificial intelligence and its role in, sort of exaggerating the impact of fraud. But one thing that I'm wondering is, in the virtual currency space, are there ways to use artificial intelligence to protect your virtual currency wallet or whatever you're using to contain your assets from fraud?
It's a really interesting question. I know that I'm going to a lot of conferences right now, and there's a lot of developers who are creating some very innovative tech within the artificial intelligence space and also overlapping into the blockchain space. So also, I think it's important for those listening to understand that blockchain is the technology that underlies a lot of business use applications. One of those uses happens to be cryptocurrency, but that's only one use. And you can actually have an internal business token that's not sold on an exchange, but simply is like a reward point thing, like for airlines, they can have, it's similar to that. But in terms of answering your question about artificial intelligence protecting the wallet and your assets from fraud, I don't know of anything existing yet. I think the biggest protection that you can is if you happen to own assets, whether it's NFTs, crypto, or other digital assets, is to look into cold wallets, to look at how do you move your assets offline so that way it is not visible to someone who is online, and that way you can then control those assets. And the thing that you have to remember is if you move it offline, again, remembering how do you gain access to it. So
Right. That's what I was thinking. And how do you get access to it once it's offline?
well, it will be like, without giving the name of any company, sometimes it's like a little portable device that you move it to, and then you put it back into your computer and you'll be able to see it. So it is visible, but you want to make sure you don't lose it. You don't want to lose your cold wallet. You don't want to lose your seed words or the passwords for your wallet. And there are many different vendors that have the seed words where you can actually put them onto metal. So that way, there's a lot of different storage devices for the seed words. So again, there are ways that you can access your wallet back, but fraud will happen or could happen if everything stays online. And that means that someone will be able to hack or access your information if there's not proper security around it.
And what would be proper security beside the master password into your wallet? Are there can you use biometrics? Can you use two-factor authentication?
So I would not ever you could use biometrics. I don't recommend that. The reason why I don't recommend that is like I have a daughter and she's 27 or maybe 28 now. And
which one is it? She's only your daughter. But
her birthday is coming up. So it depends on what she says. But the thing is that if you use biometrics and you're not around, she's not going to be able to use my thumbprint, my face. And sometimes those biometrics don't work. If you've ever had to kind of upload your passport and then have your face as a double, sometimes my camera on my computer is not the same as the camera on my iPad. And I've gotten frustrated many times. I keep thinking, I haven't changed. Why are you saying it's not me? So biometrics, even though it feels like it's safety from a security perspective, it actually can be a barrier if you end up needing access to your funds or your assets. So I usually recommend don't use the biometrics. The best way, you can use a VPN, but that's still not going to protect your assets thoroughly. The best way really is to have them offline if you can move them.
And by VPN, you mean a virtual private network, which is something that I know I use all the time, but you're right, there are limitations to that. It creates a veneer of privacy, which doesn't always exist.
And also keep in mind, sorry to interrupt, but the tech people who are out there who are looking to take your assets and steal them, they're very savvy. So they're going to know the workarounds. They're going to know the holes within the, the various online portals that we are using. And, in terms of also changing your passwords or, making sure that, you're doing things on a regular basis like that. I think as consumers, we're lazy sometimes. We use the same password sometimes for multiple accounts instead of figuring out how to kind of diversify it. So that little bit of extra time can make all the difference. And obviously, my memory, is good, but sometimes it's very forgetful. So I write things down, and I know there's, sometimes for people about writing things down, but that's not, that's okay for you. And it's also okay for your family. So you can also attach it to your will and have it another piece of evidence as to where you've been and what is there for you.
That's so important. I know I often tell the story about how frustrated my mom would get because I kept stressing, you need a different password, you need a different password. And she's like, you're driving me crazy. It's like, it's not me, it's them. But then I said, it's okay to write it down.
Yeah.
And so she did keep a record of all of her passwords. And when she passed away and I was the executor of her estate, that record was hugely helpful because I needed to pay bills on behalf of her estate. And I could do that immediately because I knew how to get into those accounts and because she'd written the passwords down.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are look at password online organizers. I mean, I'm not saying don't use them. I'm not using one currently because, again, my concern is what happens if that company goes down. And so,
or sold, or their policies change, or they decide to monetize.
Right.
Which is what happened.
Yeah. And what I'm always looking at is, again, I add my digits together. So I'm as young as my digits are together, but I'm looking at, okay, 30 years down the road, will that company be there? Because that might be 30 years down the road is when my daughter might need to have that information. So, and, again, I'm thinking, okay, how do I create long-term information for her?
Yeah, and that's definitely something to keep in mind because companies do change policies. And, AARP Maryland recommends that people use a password manager. And I'm fine with that. I agree with you. I think you should do what's best for you. But you just need to be aware that these are companies that exist, that can be merged, that are subject to takeover or, like you said, failure or anything. So even if you use a password manager, you just don't go on autopilot. You have to make sure that the policies in place still fit what you think you were buying into when you decided to retain the password manager. LastPass would be an example of that, where their policies changed and maybe were not as favorable. So maybe you want to switch to another type of password manager, but you have to keep watching them to know that.
Exactly. And the other thing that I would say is because most of us don't read our terms and conditions.
Right.
Even though my background's law, I don't read, the terms and conditions because they're so long.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No, but the important thing is to make sure your family member knows how to access that password manager as well. And if there is an ability to give beneficiary on any of these online portals, then definitely do that, because if for some reason they need access to your phone or some other now there's all these double Google authenticators, and so your family also needs, from a fraud protection, great, they're constantly alerting you, but from a family protection, if they're not doing something fraudulent, you're trying to protect your family also in this situation so they can access what it is that you need in the time of your need. And so that going back and forth is very confusing to us, let alone to the family member that's thinking, okay, I can't access it. Now, where on your phone was it that I should be looking? Is it your email? Is it the Google Authenticator? That's why writing it down and showing the flow of action of what the account is, where it has to go for double authentication, if there's a certain password or other, sometimes there are memory words,
Right.
yeah, so the prompts. And so if you don't write down what those prompts are, if your, family member doesn't know that it's your favorite food or dog or whatever it is, then they're going to be lost and they won't be able to access it, and they'll be really frustrated at a time of need.
And that can be particularly problematic if you're talking about accessing a crypto wallet that a person may have, because what if the owner of the wallet becomes incapacitated, and now as a family member you need access to funds to help provide care. If that wallet's offline, then what happens?
Well, you'll be able to put it back online with the cold wallet companies, and they have a website, and then you'll be able to see it. And they usually will have tech help. But even with the tech help, they might ask you for certain security words, and they might be very cautious about helping you. But the second thing that you have to know if you do own crypto and you're sharing it with your family is that the crypto has to be converted into USD or your fiat in order to help you, unless your hospital or other service provider accepts the crypto. So you still have one more step to go. Maybe you access the wallet, but you still have to figure out, okay, how do I get it back to the bank account so I can actually use it? Otherwise, it's just sitting there online and you can see it, but you have no access to it. So if you are in a decentralized wallet versus a centralized wallet, there's a whole, series of steps and things that you need to be thinking about. So again, these are questions. It's really exciting to get into the space, but you really have to think through, one, how do you protect your assets? How do you move your assets? How do you share with your family those assets? And thinking through not just the investment side, and you also have to be willing to lose your assets because of the fact, that the market goes up and down. But again, it's during that emergency time that you realize that, or your family member realizes there's a gap of knowledge. So, we talk about Protect Week. It's definitely protecting against fraud and the scammers, but it's also protecting your family so that way they have the ability to support you as well.
Very, very interesting. So here's one question as we wrap up, as we get towards the end of our time. One thing that I'm wondering too, in the traditional currency world, like say with the bank account, that bank accounts are protected by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Each account is protected to a maximum of $250,000. So that going in. But in the virtual currency world, is there something similar to that, maybe on the centralized side, some sort of insurance that you can buy to protect your wallet from market fluctuations or from loss? Or am I just, am I just like in a unicorn world?
So there is no insurance that will protect you from market. There is some business insurance that exists, but it's not to protect the consumer. And again, the insurance industry is definitely looking at this area, but at the moment, from what I know, there doesn't exist any safeguards from the insurance side. Unlike now again, that might be changing. Regulation changes so fast. But as far as I know, there is nothing that exists at the moment.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been so interesting because I think our audience can tell from what you've stated. This is not for the faint of heart. It can be complex. There are lots of things that you need to learn to educate yourself about if you decide that you're going to invest or keep assets in virtual currency. And I mean, there are gains, but there can also be a lot of, pitfalls too. You just have to be careful and do your research. And I'm thinking that the Maryland Blockchain Association might be a good place to get started.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We are definitely a good place to get started. I created the association to provide resources for those that have questions. And again, there are a lot of individuals who are within Maryland that are using blockchain as a technology to help with supply chain and not just the crypto side, but on the crypto side, we do have a lot of people in Maryland who have bought cryptocurrency. And, so someone in your family probably owns crypto. So if someone in your family owns crypto, then that means there needs to be a family discussion about who, how, when, and why, and how is it going to be transferred? How is it going to be protected? It's an information flow. And it's not to say that, the son needs to always give it to the parents, but if something happens to the son or the daughter, again, in my case, daughter, you need to know that, the parents need to know how do they access it to help. So this is a family conversation with new financial literacy that is now in our century.
I like that term, new financial literacy, because it's almost like learning a different language. Really.
It has a different vocabulary, and again, it will get simpler. Access to this currency will get simpler, but the technology has changed over time. It's definitely gotten easier, but there's still roadblocks for mass adoption, and really maybe it shouldn't be mass adopted yet because there's still a lot to learn and a lot to safeguards to put in place.
Right. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. What a segue, right? That's why we're having this conversation today as part of Protect Week, because we know that members of our audience are interested in cryptocurrency and they're asking their investment advisors about it, but they're also concerned about fraud. And so there are things that people need to be aware of, steps that they need to take to make sure that their account stays safe, no matter what world they're in, the traditional world, the physical world, or the crypto world. So thank you so much, Jackie. We really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to talk to our audience about this and just like initiate, what are some things that people need to do, just answering those basic questions. And I guess what I want to leave you with again is Protect Week, AARP.org/Maryland/Protect Week. That is our annual campaign. We're approaching our 10th year now. That's our annual campaign to shine a spotlight on elder fraud abuse and financial exploitation, and talking about cryptocurrency and ways to protect your assets from fraud is part of that. And we have lots of other resources. They are free to anyone, regardless of age. You do not have to be an AARP member. So please check out our website during Protect Week, which will be for 2025, June 16th until the 20th. We will have shred events, we'll have a teletown hall, press conference, and the social media interviews will be part of our platform during Protect Week. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Jackie, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for this great information. It really is giving us something to think about.
No, I appreciate it. And just one last little tidbit. If you are hacked or you do have a situation where your cryptocurrency has been taken, it is traceable. There are steps. It's not easy, but there are ways to track and trace. So that's a whole nother conversation that we'll have. But again, the primary thing is prevent. Then you don't have to worry about or think about how do you regain.
Exactly. Words to live by for sure. So thank you so much, Jackie. We really appreciate it. And remember, AARP.org/Maryland/Protect Week for more information and resources to keep you and your family safe. Thank you, everybody.